feels flimsy. I saw the weather was supposed to be windy. This is like very flimsy.
But it's not that windy, right?
Right now it's not, but I looked at the weather and it said it was supposed to get windy. So just if it does like fall
Do you want me to
over.
get this out of there? Or you got
Oh yeah. Well, the angle I have it at right now
is good.
doesn't have it in there.
Okay, great.
But thank you. I don't know. I will move it just for my own sanity. Yes, because otherwise I'll forget to hit record. I'm gonna hide this over here. Cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, will you just check that I'm in the frame when I walk over here? Anything that you want to take notes on. You don't need your computer.
Do you have like a website or something that you're going to be
No. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, old-fashioned notebook will work just fine. While we're waiting for the rest of the people to trickle in, I would love to hear what everybody's role is because I like to keep that in mind when I'm talking. I'm going to start, so I'm picking on you. Tell me what role, what state, what school, if you want to add it.
Yeah, I'm at Windsor Charter Academy, and I teach middle school STEM.
STEM, cool.
And I'm an IT associate.
Okay, cool. And so tell me a little bit about, I know this is a big question, like what your day-to-day looks like. Like, is it more student-facing? Is it?
School work for Foundation that partners with schools to link classrooms around the globe. So effectively, I'm free tech support and any questions they have because they don't really all have an IT person. They have a teacher that's somewhat okay with tech.
Okay. So you're the the line of defense when.
For anything they need, they come to me.
Okay, cool. And I'm putting you on the spot. You don't have to answer this question. Can I ask like what you're hoping to get out of this talk?
I'm just trying to learn more about the general sentiment of teachers.
Okay.
AI and everything.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Just so I know, like I like to kind of throw in bits and pieces throughout the talk so it's relevant. Thank you.
I teach junior high English in extremely rural school, and I'm kind of the teacher who's pretty okay with tech in my district.
Okay. Okay, so you're the tech savvy of the. They go to you.
Now you're just putting words in people's mouths.
Okay. Well, no, you can correct me. You can correct me. Okay. Cool. Awesome. As you might have missed it, we're talking about what's your role, what's your district, just so I know what to add in.
I just retired and no longer at the district.
Okay. Great.
I teach math, taught math, and now I do recitations.
Oh, perfect. Awesome.
So if you were talking about science and stuff, I applied to my classroom, so I was curious.
Okay. Just maybe like taking bits and pieces and like incorporating it into some of the work that you're doing, or what are you hoping to get?
Yeah, because I still talk to teachers. And this is what I found going to my classroom.
Okay.
Back and forth about ideas.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Yes. Okay. I remember meeting you yesterday. Awesome.
I'm in Jeffco, which is downhill.
Yeah.
So I've taught K-12. I was a classroom teacher many, many years ago, and now I'm an ESL teacher. Next year will be middle school.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks for sharing. And you're still ESL for middle schools? Okay. Cool.
I've done K-12, ESL.
But okay, the range, but like within the ESL.
Next year,
Okay. Cool. I'll go back to you. Yeah.
science teacher, middle school, but high school primarily in Douglas County.
Okay.
I am a director of technology and technology teacher at a private school for neurodiverse learners. I was lucky enough to take a teaching learning in the brain master cert class.
Oh,
It's
cool.
kind of like figuring out, so when you said, I was like, oh, my jam. But I just was looking like to hear like what kind of things are latest, greatest, and push with neurodiverse learners.
Yeah. Okay. I can definitely add some stuff around that. Yes, share with me.
My name's Dawn. I teach in Whitefield. I teach first grade, but I do clubs and stuff with 2nd through 8th grade, our schools K through 8. I was actually talking in the hallway.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's funny you put the flannel on and I like can't
sorry.
recognize you for whatever reason.
It's like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. We were talking about or you were talking about TikTok and my
Yes.
ears perked up and I'm like, oh, dopamine. You should come to my talk.
I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for being here.
Yes. I teach elementary STEM in Cherry Creek School District.
Cool. Awesome.
I teach high school math and computer science in Pueblo, Colorado.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Oh, welcome. Come join us. Sorry, I'm not trying to make you feel left out.
No, I actually was hoping to ask in the 1 minute before your time was start, if you could say I'm trying to decide between this session and another one.
Yeah.
What are you hoping to hit with this one? Because I read the description, I wasn't really sure what.
Yeah. So this is dopamine and attention. What's your role? Like, are you a teacher?
Spanish instructor at the high school level.
Yeah. Okay. So what my talk is going to be about is there's two modes in the brain when it comes to paying attention, and most of the way that our curriculum is designed is to hijack more of an automatic mode, which reduces attention span. And I'm going to talk about how do we actually activate the mode in our brain when it comes to paying attention that it expands attention and retention of what we're learning. So it doesn't matter what language they're learning in. It's about attention and focus in the classroom. I will not be offended if you don't. I was going to say, if you want to.
I'm pretty sure the other people are not going to be recording.
Yeah, if you want to. If I can get your email, I can send it to you. Well, thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for stopping by. I like that you were like, I don't know, I like both. Okay, this is great timing. We're at 3:15, so I'm going to start. My name is Jessica. I'm going to get into who I am, but I really want to start with what this talk is. And it's funny because when I started out in the classroom, I was very anti-tech. We had one computer and it was like very closely monitored who used it, when, and what they used it for. And now I've like pendulum swung all the way to the other side and I work for an ed tech company. So, and my background is in neuroscience. And it's been just so fascinating to me to understand how students learn. And especially right now in the landscape of technology, everybody's trying to take their best shot at how do we leverage tech in the classroom so that we can help teachers do more and do more of what they want to do and do less of what they want to do. And it's just funny how it feels like, and again, I've been out of the classroom now for 4 years. So, you know, I'm going to speak about my experience, but it might be different than what you're currently experiencing. But it kind of seems like the tech is not, it's almost like how we invented dishwashers and microwaves and all these things and appliances. And we're like, we're going to have so much time. And now we're all like busier than we've ever been in our lives. And it kind of feels like that with tech, where it's like, oh, we're going to have all these great tools. We're going to put them in the classroom. We're going to be able to, you know, do amazing things with the kids. And then the tech arrives and it's like, how come this isn't working? And so I'm going to be talking about that today. And what I hope for you guys to get out of this is to be able to see either your students or whoever you're working with in any capacity, how to understand, how to be able to speak their brain's language in order to expand their ability to focus and retain information and just to be like generated by curiosity rather than compliance. I have some stats for you that I'm going to share. Why? The microphone?
Yeah, were you planning to use it or not?
Oh, for what? Like to make my voice louder? No. Microphone for me, for the phone. Yeah. No, thank you. I appreciate it. She's keeping me on point. I'm remembering all the things. I'm going to start out with some stats that I think kind of paint the landscape of education right now. And I'm sure you guys are feeling this. And sometimes it's just nice to know that there's numbers that validate our experience. The NAEP data, I don't have what that abbreviation stands for, sorry. You know what it is?
Yeah, the
National Association for
Educational
Performance, maybe?
Performance.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
National Association for Education Performance data shows that in 2019, only 19% of fourth graders performed at below basic when it came to math. And in 2022, that same assessment showed that it spiked to 26%. So, and just to get a little bit of context, in 2019, that 19%, that was like the lowest we've ever seen it. We were doing really good in 2019. And 26% that we saw in 2022 is the highest we saw it. And we could probably make some predictions about maybe what happened in between 2019 and 2022 that maybe skewed those numbers. And it has gone down a couple percentage points since 2022, but it just kind of shows like the state of what we're in right now, especially in the context of technology, because obviously a lot more technology was inundated into the classrooms in the last, 6, 7, 8 years. The NAEP also found that 66% of American fourth graders cannot read at a proficient reading level. 66%. And whatever level you're at, elementary, middle school, high school, I've also worked with college professors. I mean, they stopped assigning books to read in their class because they said they don't read them. And they don't read them because they don't know how to read. And it's real. It is a real thing. And yeah, anyways, we have time to keep track of. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. One more thing. The Program for International Student Evaluation data shows that students are uniquely struggling with tasks that require transferring mathematical concepts to real-world context. I see some head nods. This, essentially, I thought this stat was useful because it segues into what I'm talking about today, which it just proves that memorizing a step for compliance does not help students think critically. And we know this. We experience it. We see it in the classroom. We didn't need stats to prove it because we feel it every day. And, you know, in education, I'm just gonna make sure I'm on time. Okay. In education, the hard part is that we are experiencing things from one perspective. Like, I don't know if you guys have heard that analogy of like, I think it's like a blind man touching an elephant and they're like, oh, and they describe what an elephant is and they're like, oh, it's like, you know, thin and bushy, or like it has this texture, or like, you know, they're describing the ear or the trunk or the leg, and they're all describing an elephant, but they all have a very different experience of it. And we have admin who are, you know, the buffer between kind of the state and the board, and they're trying to make sure that the test scores are up and they're presenting the data and they're in compliance. Then we have the principals who are, you know, dealing with the teacher turnover and chronic absenteeism and culture of the schools. And then we have the teachers who are on the ground and they're burnt out and they've got tech that they're dealing with. They got initiative after initiative that are being rolled out. And then we have people who are designing curriculum that understand pedagogy, but they see that it's just like applying it into the classroom is like night and day. And so I wanted to mention that because I understand what I'm about to say is hopefully fascinating and interesting, but I understand that the landscape of education is really complex. And it's like not like, you know, it's like when I go to the doctor and they're like, have you tried taking ibuprofen? And I'm like, I would not be here if ibuprofen was the solution to this problem. So like, I can understand that sometimes we go to sessions like this and it feels like the person talking to us is just like, have you tried ibuprofen? And you're like, I can't. Like, please stop talking to me. But I think this is genuinely fascinating stuff. And even with all the battles that we're fighting in the classroom, I think this is going to be really, really interesting to pay attention to. So I want to share a couple stories, like I mentioned, from my experience in the classroom, because I have a little bit of a unique experience. It's been a little bit non-traditional. I worked in Montessori education in lower elementary, so first, second, third. I did that for 3 years. And then I worked as a high school dropouts, like GED instructor for 16 through 21-year-old students / young adults. And so I got to see a really wide scale and scope of education and in a non-traditional way. So I got to like test out a lot of different things. And as I mentioned, my degree is in neuroscience. So as I was learning about the brain and like cognition and how students actually retain information, I was able to test it out a little bit more easily in my classroom because it's a little bit more relaxed and they have, maybe rules that they don't have at public schools, which, we can argue whether or not that's a good thing. But what I noticed over my experience was that there was a pattern starting to emerge of like student who was problematic, deemed as problematic, being able to find what motivated them, what was interesting to them, and then being able to, like, the curriculum and all the things that I was like, this is what I've been telling you to do for the last 6 months and you just haven't been doing it. Once I was able to like pair it with their interest, I didn't have to convince them to do the work. So let me share a couple stories to hopefully illustrate what I'm talking about. There was a student in my program for the high school dropouts getting their GED. And if you're not familiar, it's 4 tests, unless you're taking the high set: math, science, social studies, language arts. She was in this program for 9 months before I started working there. And she had taken all 4 tests and tried one of them again. So she took 5 tests in 9 months, failed all 5 of them, which is rare. And so I come into the program, I'm all gung-ho, when we started a new school and a new place, and we're like, yeah, we can do everything. And, she's on my radar, and I'm thinking, yep, she's gonna be like, I'm gonna help her pass, like, I'm gonna do it. And everybody's warning me, like, Jessica, good luck. We've tried, but you can do what you want. We're not gonna stop you. And so I tried to take a different approach with her. I sat down with her at our first 3 kind of like one-on-ones. I didn't bring up anything about taking tests. I didn't bring up anything about her study plan. I didn't bring up anything about like, what she's proficient in or what kind of study skills does she have. I didn't talk about anything like that. I just wanted to get to know her. And as I got to know her, she told me without explicitly telling me like a few different things. One, that she really wanted autonomy, and that piece is going to come back throughout this talk. Two, that she's 17 years old. She wants to move out on her own. She, wants to get her own job. She wants to be independent. She wants to just be an adult. And, her mom puts her in this program, and then all the teachers are telling her what to do. And I realized, like, you're smart. Like, you don't really need our help. So, like, do you want your GED? Like, is that important to you? And she's like, yeah, of course it is. And so I said to her, like, well, what do you think needs to happen? And she listed everything that all the teachers were telling her to do, right? And I said, well, let's just do that. Why don't you, like, you're in charge. Let's do this. Why don't we check in, like, at the end of each day? Here's your plan. And you let me know how the plan is going. She ended up graduating in 3 months, passed all 4 tests in 3 months, graduated before her 18th birthday, was able to get a job, was able to move out, apply for an apartment. And it was just that one switch of autonomy that like totally accelerated her process. Like, she was absolutely capable of passing the tests. It was just that she wanted to do it for herself. There was another student that I remember, first grader. This was when I was in Montessori. In Montessori, you have a lot of freedom. And he would just spend like the whole morning pretty much just walking around the classroom, just like this. And luckily, I was working with another teacher. I wasn't like the lead. And I'm thinking like, all right, he needs some math assignments. Let's just get him some worksheets, sit him down, tell him what to do. Why are we letting him walk around? What is this, And the teacher that I was working with said, every student is trying to meet their own needs in the way that they know how to. Like, he doesn't know how to handle himself in the classroom. So like, our approach was different. It ended up being like, let's figure out what's going on. Let's figure out why is he wandering around the classroom? And what we ended up finding out is that he was so excited about all the different things that he could work on that he literally could not pick what to do. And so he just wandered around the classroom. And when we were able to sit down with him and essentially create a plan that we as much as you could put a first grader in the driver's seat. We said, okay, like, we can do something that you're interested in. We can pick what subjects you want to work on when, and then it's like he couldn't be bothered. He was so focused on his work. It was unbelievable. It was like night and day. And I kept seeing these stories repeated throughout my teaching career of like, okay, we have a student who can't focus on math to save her life, but I could tell she gets her makeup done, she gets her hair done, like she puts a lot of effort into that. And I said, hey, do you shop at Sephora? And she said, yeah. Her GED test, she was missing fractions and percentages. And I said, do you know what the cost of something is when it's 20% off? And she said, no. I said, do you want to know? She said, yeah, that'd be great. And I'm like, okay, well, I have something for you, and then all of a sudden worksheets about fractions became really interesting to her. And so again, like I just kept seeing this repeated throughout my teaching career. And then the neuroscience half of me was like, okay, what is this? What's going on? Because I'm sure we all see this, right? Like I'm sure we have stories that are lighting up in our brains that are just like, yeah. Mm-hmm. But obviously we can't spend one-on-one time every day at the end of the day with every single student we have. It's a lot of work to put those one-on-one relationships in. We want to do it, but we like literally do not have the bandwidth to make that happen. So this is what brings me to the neuroscience of this. It's like, what's going on? Okay. Let me see what time it is. What time did we start? What time did we end? 4. Okay. Oh, we're doing good. Yeah, so the neuroscience of this, let me drink some water because my mouth is very dry. I'm guessing nobody has any questions at this point, or if anybody wants to share a story or has like any kind of brain sparkle happening that you're like, I want to share. Cool. So, as I was studying learning and cognition and memory, I felt like all the questions that I was asking in the education context, I never felt like I got a good answer of like, why is it like this? And why don't we do more of this? And why don't we do more of that? And part of it has to do with the complex nature of our education system. But I think the other part of it is that either we don't know or not enough people are talking about how attention and dopamine truly behave in the brain, especially in a developing mind. So there's a part of our brain, it's not a part, it's a network in our brain called the salience network, SALIENCE, salience network. And this network is in charge of deciding what's worth paying attention to. And the salience network operates in 2 modes. We have a bottom-up mode and a top-down mode. Most of the approaches I've seen in traditional education with tech very much take a bottom-up approach. And I'll go into the science of this, but just for the Cliff Notes version before we get into it. This approach, it reduces your ability to pay attention. There's like a really long list. It increases impulsivity. It makes people insulin resistant, hypervigilant, increases inflammation, anxiety, and can develop learned helplessness in students, which, thank you. I know, when I was learning this, I thought, oh, we need to be talking about this because some of our systems, some of our tech, and some of our teaching habits are reinforcing this, and we don't know. This talk is not to like, I made every mistake in the book. I make mistakes every single day, like teaching, not teaching. This is not a talk to say like, we're bad people. It's just like, I think we need to be aware that we might be reinforcing behaviors that we don't want to see. And then talk about like, what do we do instead? So this bottom-up approach, I'm going to try my best to like make this as understandable as possible, basically starts with sensory input. So something happens. Who was here to see the moose yesterday? Sorry, Jamie, I'm not. Okay, there was a moose here yesterday, and everybody's. This is what Megan told me. I wasn't here to see it. Everybody's saying, "Oh my gosh, it's a moose, or is it a bear?" And they're yelling and they're running, right? This is our bottom-up salience network. There's some kind of sensory input from the external environment, a moose, and everybody unconsciously runs. You know, that's fight or flight. They're like, what is that? And, you know, that's not a bad response. We need that response in our brain, right? If you've ever done a fire drill with a group of students, you definitely want their bottom-up salience network online for that. You don't want students being like, I wonder what that sound is. Do you think we should, like, get in line right now? You know, like, you want, just go. Let's go get out the door.
Let's find the problem.
Yeah, right. Like, where is the fire coming from? Is there really a fire? Right. Yeah, that's not the time. Yeah, that's not the time to pontificate. So it's really useful. But it is also, and I'll get more into the brain process, what it looks like step by step, but it is very much what we see a lot of our tech doing, like social media, like notifications, anything that is like fast-paced. I don't want to like name names of specific things because they're not, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying they use this part of the salience network to get people to pay attention.
We can all say TikTok.
Oh, no, yeah, okay, that's not what I was thinking, but no, 100%. It is, like, TikTok is a great example because, yeah. So what happens is we get sensory input, and from that sensory input, it travels to a part of our brain called the thalamus. The thalamus is like Grand Central Station in New York City. Like, all the input goes through the thalamus. Like, its job is to filter all that information. And there's a specific part of the thalamus, I'm going to get a little nerdy, called the pulvinar nucleus. The pulvinar nucleus. And when there's sensory input that goes to the thalamus and it activates this pulvinar nucleus, what happens is there's like a threat detection that occurs. It's like, basically it says, is the stimuli in enough contrast to what we're experiencing that it would be worth paying attention to? So that's the thalamus job. Once it passes that kind of like security check, if you will, it goes to the amygdala, which you may or may not have heard of. Okay, I see some nods. Amygdala, very associated with fear and your fight or flight system and emotion. Your amygdala's job, well, your amygdala does a lot of things, but its main priority is to ask the question, is this going to kill us? Like, that's the job of the amygdala. It's like, am I going to die? Which is funny because we see a moose and we're excited about it, but like the brain's really like, am I going to die? We got to go over there and look at it because like, am I going to die? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So if yes, like, you know, pass go, collect $200. If yes, then what happens is essentially, I'm really like watering this down right now because we could get very nerdy about this, but it metabolizes adrenaline, cortisol, and glucose because it's like, we need energy. We need to do something. Like, let's go. It's not the thinking time, it's the go time. And the go time is when we need adrenaline, cortisol, glucose. A very useful part of the brain, very grateful for it, but not a great way to learn things. What happens after this, I'm not even done, is it then shuts down a part of our brain, which is going to be important for the other mode of operation, is our dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. I know. You can just call it the ACC. The job of the ACC, and I wish I had a diagram. I don't. So you're just going to have to either Google it or bear with me. If I cut my brain in half, and I was like showing you this half of my brain, the prefrontal cortex is right here. The amygdala is kind of in the center. The anterior cingulate cortex is between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala and the thalamus and like a bunch of other things. But the point is, its job is to create a mental map of reality, and it's constantly checking. Is this real? Is this lined up to what we thought was real? Like, is the fire actually there? And when we shut down our anterior cingulate cortex, it means we don't need to think about it. We just need to do something. That's kind of like the gist of that. It reinforces impulsive behavior and short attention span, like I said. Yeah, okay, actually, I feel like I said what I needed to about that. One thing I will say is, as I mentioned in the beginning of this talk, like there's some pretty stark statistics about reading and math, right? Like the state of children's education right now feels very much like it's in an emergency, but if we are teaching in the classroom as if it's an emergency, students aren't going to learn. Yeah. So it makes sense. It's an urgent problem, but the way to approach it can't be from that part of the nervous system. Yeah. Any questions? Anyone want to? Cool. So, oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Steve, just because people tend to blow over it, we're always taught fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Yeah, there's many responses. Yeah, fawn is has to do more if there's another person involved, and it's kind of like people pleasing. It's like making sure the other person is okay, kind of.
Or I think about it too with animals,
Mm-hmm.
and an animal that would fawn might be a puppy that licks the chin of the adult, hey, don't be mad, hey.
Yes,
Kind of
yes.
this
No,
is
that is actually
and,
really.
the fawning of hey, don't kill me.
Yes. Yeah, I'm innocent. Please.
I'm a good boy.
I'm a weak. Yeah.
Different, but if you can frankly. Sorry,
Yes.
that was a really
No. That's good. That's good.
I've been doing this wrong the whole time.
Was there another comment?
We'll call it something else. There we go.
Do you have an example of this bottoms up in the classroom that might trigger this response?
Yeah, I do, and I'm not trying to say anything bad about Kahoot, but Kahoot's a really good example. Yeah, have you ever done and I'm not saying it's bad to do trivia, or we did trivia last night, it was so fun. It's such a great thing to do with students. They're not learning.
They're filing.
Yeah, they're not learning. The behavior that's being reinforced is go fast. So, yes. So that's the example that comes to my mind. I don't know if that helps.
Because if you think of the difference of what we did last night compared to Kahoot, the experiences are very different. The formative experience was way less I feel like anytime I play Kahoot, it's I gotta answer, because I'm very competitive, I want to be on
And I
top.
wanted points for how fast I was
It was hard
answering.
for me last night, a little bit at first to stay engaged, I was well, I don't know if I'm winning. I don't know if I care to stay in this.
Right.
Which was not a great thing, that's just what it was, right? But Kahoot is a very different experience than last night's formative. And then I think just interacting with your brain differently too. That you can see
Right.
those two things are not the same.
Right. And the urgency piece is definitely part of that. Sorry, go ahead.
It's also when you use
Right. Exactly.
Because if you use Kahoots as an exercise to reinforce stuff they have closer to mastery in it, then you're teaching them to take the stuff they know and learn how to apply it quicker, and that's okay.
Right.
There's a time for it.
Exactly. It's I don't want to make a blanket statement of everything is bad, everything is good. And at the end of this, I'll tell you about some resources I have. I created a sheet of how to assess tech, if it's doing more of a bottom up versus top down approach. But again, it's not a blanket statement of don't use this, don't use that. It's how you use something. How can we get a certain part of the brain involved? And I think when we talk more about the top down, my hope is that that contrast will start to help you see oh yeah, how would I do this? And what would this look like in practice? Anybody else want to add anything? Cool. So if if we think about the bottom up versus the top down approach as fuel for, I mean, we could say learning or doing something. I like to think of the bottom up being like diesel and the top down is like eco mode. It's very resourceful. This mode of the salience network is very energy efficient. The bottom up approach is extremely metabolically expensive, extremely. And part of that is because the bottom up uses the HPA axis. I don't know if anybody's heard of that before, but basically your adrenal glands are pumping out cortisol, which is metabolically expensive. The glucose spikes that happen are metabolically expensive because the way that, without getting too much into the science of it, the way that your body and brain operates in that bottom up is that it dumps a bunch of sugar and then also blocks the processes for metabolizing that sugar. So you're actually increasing your insulin, which is why you become insulin resistant when you're in fight or flight mode all the time. So it's a very expensive way to be living. And, you know, this can be reinforced accidentally in the classroom if we're not careful. So top down, let's talk about that one. This one, I mean, it blew my mind when I was doing the research on this because I couldn't, at first I couldn't understand. I was like, wait, so it's the same thing, like you're getting a sensory input as the first step, but there's an important first step that activates this top-down, more intrinsic approach to your salience network, to like what is worth paying attention to. And the first stop in the brain is the hippocampus. Has anybody heard of the hippocampus before? Okay. Does anybody want to share what it's about, like what it's associated to? Say it again. Yeah, yes. Exactly. Anybody? Yeah. It is. It's memory. It's where your memory is. And, it's also timekeeper. Yeah, I guess it is our timekeeper.
It's
Yeah.
into the system that makes us have a sense of passing.
Yeah.
I don't think it does it by itself. It's linked in with the other one. Because people with damaged hippocampuses have trouble differentiating between a second and a minute and an hour.
Oh, interesting.
Time is skewed.
Okay. Now my brain is like, because it's in the temporal lobe and it does this and that.
Multiple
Yeah.
research papers on that particular effect of the hippocampus. They don't think it does it by itself.
Well,
They're not entirely sure what else it's linked to that creates that inherent sense of time.
well, if you think about it, memory
Memory
is
time.
your timekeeper in a way. That's fascinating. Okay, that's cool. Your hippocampus is largely in charge of memory retrieval. So I'll talk about the process first, and then we'll talk about what this might look like in the classroom. If I ask, and this is the only example I could come up with when I was creating this talk, so sorry. If I ask you guys to remember like where you were on 9/11, you can maybe all, hopefully, I mean, maybe some of us don't know, but
I'm sorry, how old are you?
I'm not going to reveal that information. We can remember.
She was fine.
I don't remember 9/11. We could probably remember like where we were. We could see like the house, the room, like it's very visual. What I was thinking is when Michael Jackson died, I really remember where I was, but that I don't know if that's like as relatable as 9/11. So, but what I just did is activate your hippocampus. And so you're going to go into your temporal lobe, which you just talked about, your parietal lobe, and your occipital lobe, which is where your visual cortex, your somatosensory cortex, and your auditory cortex lives. Basically what that means is you're visualizing it, you're thinking about the sounds that you heard, like the sensations you felt. Like I was weirdly at a park when I found out that Michael Jackson died, and I can remember like the wood chips on the ground and the smell of it. That is the start of the top-down, why am I forgetting the name? No, what are we talking about? Salience network, sorry. Hippocampus is not working. That's the start of the top-down salience network mode, is the hippocampus, is drawing up memory. Why? Because we need that sensory input, but we need it to come internally, not externally. And I could talk more about that, but I want to be cognizant of time. Yeah. So when we have that internal sensory input, it bypasses the thalamus and the amygdala, and it goes straight to the dorsal ACC. What is it called? Anterior cingulate cortex. Remember we talked about that one? Anterior cingulate cortex. It's that thing that's between the front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, and the amygdala. It bypasses the thalamus and the amygdala, goes straight to the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. That's important because what it essentially does is it like gets that part of the brain to turn on, not turn off. We need it on. Once it gets turned on, it turns on the VIPs of your ACC, the vasoactive intestinal peptide neurons. I don't expect you to remember that because I definitely couldn't. Basically, your anterior cingulate cortex, like the default mode is that like the brakes are always pushed in. And so when we go through this process of the hippocampus and the sensory neurons, it takes the brakes off and it's like, oh yeah, here we go, let's party. And it will send out just basically like signals to the parts of the brain that it's attached to, which is your VTA, your ventral tegmental area. And your ventral tegmental area is the main producer of dopamine in your brain. I know, we got there eventually. It took us a while, but here we are, dopamine, we've arrived. And notice how I didn't actually mention dopamine in the first process. There's virtually no dopamine involved in the first process. It's all adrenaline and cortisol, although, yeah, I won't add that. So, yes, VTA gets turned on, dopamine is produced, and then another part of the brain gets activated, the locus coeruleus, which produces adrenaline, norepinephrine. Now, you might be like, well, wait a second. We got adrenaline in both processes. What's the difference? Why? Like, well, I thought adrenaline was the bad guy here. It's like causing all these problems with the tension and stuff. The reason why this process isn't even done. We're just taking a pit stop really quick. The reason why this process is so much more energy efficient, like I said, it's like eco mode, is because this is happening on a cellular level in the brain tissue rather than at an organ level across the entire body. So like your amygdala in the bottom-up approach is essentially helping produce cortisol, adrenaline, and glucose, but like for the entire body, which is expensive.
And it doesn't need your toes. Like you don't need your toes to learn this.
Yes.
But when you do it bottom up, like it's that your toe, yeah.
Getting the whole body. Like, yeah, your arm doesn't need to be involved unless you're learning how to play sport. But anyways.
Let's start with that.
Yeah. In this process, in the eco mode, the top down, it's very, very, very focused. It's just sending adrenaline to one specific part of the brain. And you know what that part of the brain is? The prefrontal cortex. This is in charge of executive functioning. This is where we want to be learning things. If you guys have heard your prefrontal cortex, this is where we want the brain to turn on, especially because it is the part of the brain that takes the longest to develop. People do say like, oh, it takes about until 25 years old for it to develop. It's like not completely true. It develops for a long time. Like it's the most malleable part of the brain, but it takes a lot of practice to use it, essentially. Like that takes until 25 means it really takes a lot of practice to use it. And when we're using that bottom-up approach, not only are we just like not using that part of the brain, but we are actively deteriorating the pathways that allow us to use that part of the brain. This pathway, not only does it turn on the prefrontal cortex, it does something that I think is so incredible, is after the prefrontal cortex is turned on, the prefrontal cortex now is like, we're focused, we're paying attention, right? And I get there's variations. We talked about like neurodivergent learners and like students who experience trauma. So like there's some variation there that I'll touch on. But what the prefrontal cortex does in this process, then it sends neurons out to the thalamus. Remember the thalamus? Grand central station, right? It's always taking in all these inputs. It sends GABA to that part of the brain. And GABA is like a brake. It tells things to stop. And it says, stop paying attention for threats. So not only are you learning things, but it's suppressing the part of your nervous system that's in charge of detecting threat. So even if you have students who are experiencing things at home that like you can't fight every battle for your student, right? You can know that like, okay, even if we're engaging in the learning process in our classroom, they're still going to be able to turn down the threat response. It's not going to look the same, obviously, as a student who's coming from a home that's a little bit safer and less unpredictable. But even if you can get the volume to turn down a little bit for that student, like you're going to see so much of a difference. I'm going to pause here. Are we understanding what I'm saying? Does it make sense? Okay. Do I have a classroom example? Yes, I'm going to go there next, but yes, go ahead.
When I go over stuff, my students should have already learned. One of the questions I ask is, do you remember this from 6th grade?
Yeah.
And a lot of them click, and they stop and they think about it. I'm like, okay, do you remember it not at all, a little bit, or good? I know most of them at least remember it a little bit, but it keys them off of the memory part, and then they're focused on trying to remember if they remember it.
Yeah.
And they take in the information, they're trying to tie it back to the neurons that are already there, even though they don't realize that's what they're doing. And they're much more focused, trying to remember seeing it before, and they're not responding to it as new material I'm throwing out because I tie it back to what they've already.
Yeah, because there's like a reference point. I'm actually so glad you said that because I forgot to mention something that's actually very important to this whole process. And it's not that, okay, let's go to the beginning. That's a hippocampus, right? It gets this whole cascade to turn on. It goes through the sensory neurons to the ACC, to the ventral tegmental area, to the prefrontal cortex, to the thalamus, right? The starting point, hopefully you guys feel like intrigued or interested or curious right now. That's my hope. Right now, I've got like that process running for you. Like that's my hope, that this talk is like demonstrating the point. The reason why this works is because, and I actually didn't give the best example because I asked you to remember 9/11, which has literally nothing to do with what we're talking about. But the memory that you can retrieve at the beginning of like a lesson plan, the more relevant it is to the goal that a student cares about or an interest they have, the stronger it will like have that process run through. So when I was talking about these examples with the students that I was working with, and I was like, I feel like I'm noticing a pattern here. Like we find out what they're interested in, whether it's autonomy, and autonomy is actually a huge driver of this process. If you can give students autonomy, I know that's like, you know, like, okay, I let them, you know, go sharpen their pencil and they're already like causing havoc. So giving them autonomy doesn't work, but I understand that. But what I noticed was every student that I talked to who was able to move to a different point in their learning and to understand something and actually like do the boring work that we know they need to do, it all started with something they were interested in. So the student who wanted to move out and be independent, the student who was really interested in all the different works, the student who, I'm like trying to remember who else I mentioned to you guys. Because there was like so many students that I worked with that like, oh, and the makeup, right? Like it was things they cared about that helped connect to that part of their salience network. Sorry, no, is it hard to hear me? A little bit. Maybe let's wait. I know, let's wait. Oh, we don't have time to wait. Let's see. I know. This is actually like a perfect tie together. And we have like 2 minutes left, so it'll work if you stick with me. So this part of the brain, this like salience network mode, the top down, What it does is it creates mental stamina, clears brain fog, neuroplasticity, neuron myelination. I know.
Are they killing the
Lowers blood pressure, stabilizes your heart rate, lowers inflammation, creates mastery, self-efficacy, and internal confidence. Now, I know everybody's like, this is awesome. Now what do I do about this? And we're at 4 o'clock, and I know we're at, not 4 o'clock, we're at 3:59. This was intentional. I'm intentionally leaving this on a cliffhanger because I want your top-down salience network to kick into overdrive right now. I have resources for you, and if you want to learn more, I'm going to ask that you write down your email, and I'll send it to you. Basically, I have examples of how do we activate this in our lesson plans, what questions can we ask our students, what approach can we take, and how do we assess our tech to make sure that it's taking this approach. My homework for you guys is that at some point between now and like the end of the day, you're going to be sitting somewhere waiting for something to happen. And I couldn't get into this during the talk because there's just like too many things I could have talked about. There's something called your default mode network. And when you sit there in idle and you're just like not doing anything, default mode network kicks on. This is when your brain starts to consolidate memory. So you're going to start thinking about this talk and you're like, okay, what did Jessica say? She talked about the amygdala. She talked about, right? And I want you to let your brain wander about this concept, and I want to give you the resources that I have because I knew I wasn't going to be able to get into this. The main driver of the top-down salience network, though, is autonomy. Like the Cliff Notes, it's autonomy. The more autonomy you can give to a student, even if it's like changing the background on their computer, or like the kind of like, I know in Slack, like you can change like the color that you do, like the app on, like those little things, and then to reward them with more autonomy. Like I go into this in the resources that I have, but I really wanted to introduce this concept just to get your brain itching a little bit to be like, what is this? I want to learn more. I think this is a conversation that we need to be having in education. And I really appreciate you being here for 45 minutes while I yap about the brain. Thank you so much for being here.
I feel like when you said like, oh yeah, top down, I feel like that's what administrators are trying to get at when they're like, remember your why. Except that makes me want to like throw them into the sun.
Right.
And so,
Right.
Like they're trying to do it, but they don't have the
They don't know how to do it.
get it. So there's like, we think that if we give them, if we make sure that they're like.
Well, the district leaders, look, I'm not saying I'm not trying to talk shit about district leaders.
I'll do it for
But like if they were to already know what your individual why was, and then they were able to connect that in one-on-one meetings with you about what you're teaching.
The same exact thing that you're just talking about doing with kids.
Yes. Obviously, that's hard to do because scale, but that's kind of like the question is like, how do you scale this?
But if we're expected to do that in some capacity with all of our students, why can't they have this expectation for themselves?
Right. Absolutely.
Sorry.
It's
Don't be
actually
sorry.
easier for them because they're dealing with less staff in most cases than the number of students you're dealing with.
And also for
Could be.
adults. You know what I mean?
We do have decently developed
Most of
Hey
them.
now.
Notice that you
Put me in a box.
Because that's really what taught me was when you said it develops learning.
I couldn't help
Oh,
myself.
yeah.
Sorry. I'm just hankering.
If they have
Right,
used
lunch
learned
is not it.
helplessness, how can we help them to move away from that?
So this is a good question. Learned helplessness. Oh, sorry. Am I interrupting something? Oh, the question was basically like, how do we help students who've developed learned helplessness? So if we talk about it from a biological or neurobiological standpoint, learned helplessness is essentially, they go through this process of like their ACC lighting up and saying, hey, our mental map of reality doesn't match what just happened. And then after that, there's like a slight dopamine dip that occurs. And if they aren't able to get proof that they can get help and like accomplish the task and succeed, if they keep just getting the dopamine cliff dive after their anterior cingulate cortex lights up and says, this isn't matching reality, and they're not getting the help that they need to correct that, that's where learned helplessness develops. So basically what happens is they realize they're like wrong about something. They try to get help. It doesn't get resolved. And it has happened enough times over and over again where they just say, nothing can help me. And those are the students that you're going to see that are like completely checked out. They don't try. They're like, I could care less. That's learned helplessness. And so when a student is experiencing learned helplessness, we have to make the ask and the win like so small, so microscopic, and we need to make it repeatable so they can see like over and over again at least a few times, and especially if they're really young and they've already learned, like if they're already in learned helplessness, the more repetition they're going to need. And that could be true older as well, but like we don't know how much repetition it would take for them to learn to realize like, oh, when I ask for help, I receive it and the problem gets resolved. So that's a general answer. I don't know your specific situation, so I can't like speak to it.
What does that look like in the so they're classroom of 35, and so what does that look like?
So for me, what I really liked doing was giving them like a responsibility, and a responsibility where they could see cause and effect, like taking the trash out, and just see like, I take the trash out, the trash is empty. And like something that they really want to take responsibility over. Maybe it's sharpening the pencils. Maybe it's organizing something in the classroom, like, materials or crayons or whatever. But put them in charge of something that they want to be in charge of. Let them take ownership of how they want to do it. Make it very small though. Like if they mess it up catastrophically, it's not gonna, cause any problems. But that's what I've seen be the most effective for students, especially young students, is like give them something to be in charge of long term for like maybe a month, and then let them mess it up, let them be upset about it, let all the messes happen, but try and be there to like reinforce like, hey, you did that, and now it looks like this. Like, did you notice that? Because they just literally can't. They don't have the wiring to see like, oh yeah, cause and effect. And I can't remember which subject you teach specifically. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, interesting.
I would call my students up to the board. Some of them behave that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, go up to the board. Bring a friend up there with you to help you. All you have to do is write it down. And if you can learn to go up there and just write it down, I don't know how to do it. It doesn't matter because you have a whole classroom full of people to help you. I'll walk you through the process. If I can get them to go up there once or twice and just be comfortable being the recorder, and then next time I won't say all the steps. We'll just ask the questions and we'll start filling it in. And if they make a mistake, I'm like, yep, we made a mistake. How do we fix it?
Yeah.
And it's small little things like that.
I think that's part of
I was going to say, just from what you were describing, just like reducing the barrier of entry to just engaging in some capacity. So like you said, basically having that student be a scribe and make it a community or communal type effort is one way to get them at that learned helplessness a bit better.
But I think also, well, like knowing that like it's okay to make mistakes and that it's like a safe place to make mistakes, and like making mistakes is how you learn. Like knowing that like if you go up there and make a mistake, nobody's gonna be mad, angry, make fun of you. Like they have to know that it's safe.
Yep.
To make those mistakes, and I think
we have to model it too.
Right. They have to know that they're in a place where, like, whatever relationships they have wherever, this place right here, I can make mistakes.
That's one of the things I tell them. They're like, I don't know how to do it. I'm like, weird. They pay me to teach you that. We're good.
That's what I'm here.
I'm here. Go up there. I said, worst case, you're going to make a mistake. And if you're going to make the mistake, somebody else in class is making the same mistake, and we can learn from it.
Right.
But it's part of building relationships with your kids too. Like
they have to trust you enough to go to the board.
Yes.
If they don't trust you, like,
thank you for coming. If you want to put your email down here, perfect, awesome. I was gonna say I can send you the resources. Yeah, if you have to go, you can either write down your email or if you have a card. I love your nails. Everything's purple. All matches.
I will.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you for watching, making sure this recorded.